Shipped off. Raising teens in a world that doesn't make sense. Part 1. The Age of Unraveling. Why adolescence is more complex than ever across the globe. Chapter 1. The Global Teen Quake. Why adolescence has never been so misunderstood. Nairobi, Kenya, 3:16 p.m. Maya was 15 when the walls started closing in. On the surface, her life looked picture perfect. A private school in Westlands, a bedroom strewn with novels and hair care products, a phone she rarely let out of sight. But behind her coal-lined eyes, she was drowning. She'd wake up with her heart racing, cry for no reason, snap at her mother. Her father chalked it up to hormones. Her counselor said she was just stressed. But Maya knew it was deeper. She was losing her grip on who she was supposed to be. And not a single adult around her seemed ready to hear it. Manchester, UK, 10:42 a.m. Callum was suspended from school for the third time that term, this time for walking out of a math class mid-lesson. His teachers called him unmotivated. His mom called him a ghost in his own house. The boy who once built Lego castles now grunted through dinner and stared blankly at screens. He couldn't explain why. And no one could tell him what to do except shape up. Delhi, India, 8:00 p.m. Tanvi had top marks and the pressure to match. Her family pinned their dreams of migration to her report cards. When she failed one science exam, she didn't eat for 2 days. Her grandmother offered religious prayers. Her father lectured her for an hour. Tanvi locked herself in the bathroom and silently Googled how to disappear. A global earthquake with teenage fault lines. There is something shifting everywhere. From Johannesburg to Jakarta, São Paulo to Stockholm, the signs are unmistakable. Teenagers are breaking down, burning out, lashing out, or shutting down. And adults, parents, teachers, politicians, are reaching for old maps to make sense of new terrain. But the maps are outdated. The landmarks have moved. We are, quite literally, raising teenagers in a world that no longer follows the rules we grew up with. There's no global pandemic now, but adolescence is still in crisis. We are living through a global teen quake, and no one is prepared for the aftershocks. Why this isn't just another generation gap. This is not just about Gen Z or Gen Alpha being on their phones too much. It's not a cycle we've seen before, and certainly not one we should ignore. For the first time in human history, adolescents are being raised in hyper-connected, algorithm-driven environments, and they are expected to develop adult-level self-regulation while drowning in dopamine-triggering apps. When their identities are shaped across borders, screens, subcultures, and clashing values. And many of them are being parented by adults who themselves are overwhelmed, working multiple jobs, and culturally disoriented. We are witnessing what psychologists call a developmental collision, a once natural phase of growth crashing into an artificially accelerated, increasingly chaotic world. The data is screaming, let's not mistake this for anecdotal drama. And a 2023 report from the UK's NHS found that 1 in 5 children aged 11 to 16 now shows signs of a probable mental disorder. In Brazil, youth suicide has increased 24% in the last decade. In Sweden, one of the world's most affluent and progressive societies, loneliness and self-harm among teens have spiked alarmingly, despite strong social support systems. In Nigeria, counseling services at elite private schools are reporting a surge in quiet breakdowns among students sent from abroad. Every culture is pointing fingers, but the truth is that adolescence has become a pressure cooker, and the lid is rattling. Who or what is to blame? Is it social media? Broken families? Economic instability? Weak school systems? The loss of faith? Westernization? Repression? Too much freedom? Not enough? The honest answer, all of it, and none of it. What's happening to our teens is not a single crisis, but a convergence of systemic failures, accelerated by tech, globalization, culture wars, and a lack of shared vision on what healthy adolescence even looks like anymore. How puberty became a global battleground. Puberty was once a rite of passage. Awkward, yes, but framed by ritual, mentorship, and cultural clarity. Today, it's something closer to spiritual whiplash. A 13-year-old girl in Los Angeles gets exposed to pornography before she has her first kiss. A 14-year-old boy in Lagos is expected to behave like a good British son in Nigeria, without understanding which cultural script to follow. A 16-year-old in Tokyo collapses from exhaustion, not from physical labor, but the mental gymnastics of keeping up with expectations. We're not raising rebellious kids. We're raising disoriented humans in a disorienting world. But isn't this just growing pains? Some say teens have always been moody, confused, dramatic. It's just what they do. That's true, to a point. But this isn't just what teens do. This is what society is doing to teens. When we dismiss their confusion, we miss the larger warning. If adolescence is the training ground for adulthood, we are sabotaging the foundation of an entire generation. The real cost of getting it wrong. This isn't just about mental health, it's about social health. A teenager who never feels safe expressing pain becomes an adult who suppresses it in marriage, work, or violence. And a child who is shipped off for discipline may grow into a parent who fears vulnerability. A society that mocks teenagers will inherit adults who no longer trust it. Every teen who falls through the cracks now becomes a cultural consequence later. This book, as an urgent global dispatch shipped off, is not just a book. It's a report from the front lines. In these pages, you'll meet British teens exiled to the village in hopes they'll return grateful, Brazilian girls trying to stay skinny and spiritual, Indian boys caught between tradition and ambition, American kids medicated into numbness, Swedish teens with freedom but no grounding, and African teens used as cultural correction for Western over-permissiveness. You'll also hear from teachers, parents, psychologists, pastors, imams, researchers, and most importantly, the teens themselves. This is not a blame game. It's a call to witness, to understand, and most of all, to listen. Final reflection. Adolescence is the only universal second birth. It is painful, sacred, messy, and necessary. But today, it's under siege. From fear, confusion, and the outdated myths we keep clinging to. Before we fix our teens, we need to fix how we see them. Because the real crisis isn't in their rebellion. It's in our refusal to recognize their struggle. Chapter 2. When Puberty Meets the Algorithm. How Tech Shapes the Teenage Mind. London, UK, 9:03 p.m. Jamal's room glowed faintly in the dark, lit only by the flicker of his iPhone. He was 13, lanky and shy, still adjusting to the awkward pitch of his changing voice. On screen, a TikTok reel played. A boy his age doing pull-ups shirtless with the caption, "No girls want soft boys." Jamal watched it 3 times. Then he went to the mirror, lifted his shirt, and frowned. He didn't realize it then, but something had just shifted. Not in his body, in his brain. And it wouldn't be the last time. The new hormone highway adolescence has always been a volatile ride. The brain is undergoing its biggest upgrade since infancy. Dopamine spikes, emotional regulation dips, risk-taking, identity formation, peer attachment, all in full gear. But in the 21st century, that ride is now augmented, accelerated, and often hijacked by technology designed to manipulate the very chemicals teenagers are struggling to control. This isn't just screen time. This is neurodevelopmental warfare. The architecture of addiction. By age 14, the average teen will have spent over 13,000 hours in front of a screen, more time than they'll spend in school. Apps like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube aren't just fun distractions. They are precision-engineered dopamine traps. The algorithms that power them are designed to do 3 things. 1. Hook attention. 2. Trigger emotion. 3. Encourage repetition. And they are frighteningly good at it. In 2022, internal research from Meta, formerly Facebook, leaked by whistleblower Frances Haugen, revealed that Instagram worsened body image issues in 1 out of 3 teenage girls. Executives knew. They did nothing. In effect, tech has become the co-parent none of us invited, but one who always knows where our kids are, what they fear, who they envy, and what triggers them. The new mirror, who am I supposed to be? 15-year-old Yasmin, whose parents sent her from Birmingham to boarding school in Abuja, put it this way. It's weird. Like, I know they wanted me to be more African, but my TikTok still shows me the same videos as back in the UK. I just feel in between. Not white, not Nigerian. Not enough of anything. Her comment holds a quiet grief. The old mirrors, family, elders, school, tradition, are being replaced by global digital ones, where identity is fragmented, filtered, and constantly fed back in curated loops. A teenage brain still figuring out, who am I? Now asks, who do the algorithms think I am? And worse, what if they're right? Boys, girls, and the algorithms that raise them. The internet does not parent neutrally. And teenage girls are shown content about thinness, beauty hacks, self-improvement. Teenage boys are fed rage bait, hypermasculinity, and conspiracy-laced influencers. The algorithm trains them before school ever can. A 2023 study by the Center for Countering Digital Hate found that within 30 minutes of joining TikTok, new teen accounts were served self-harm content, eating disorder advice, and incel rhetoric. Adolescence is being curated by machines trained not for wellness but for profit. Digital village or data farm? We were promised that technology would build a global village. Instead, it's built a data farm where teenagers are the crop. And yet, this isn't a one-sided villain story. Teens also find community online, especially those who feel isolated in their physical worlds. LGBTQ+ teens in conservative homes. Neurodiverse teens misunderstood in school. Marginalized voices seeking language, solidarity, escape. The internet, for all its perils, can be a lifeline. But lifelines are not the same as lifeboats. And too often, teens are being left to swim alone in open digital oceans. The shipped-off kids are not immune. Sending a teen to a rural village in Ghana or a Quranic school in Sudan doesn't remove their algorithmic fingerprints. Almost all of the shipped-off teens I spoke to still had phones or found access to one. Even without 5G or iPads, these young people carried with them a globalized, digitalized sense of identity. One boy at a Catholic school in Kenya told me, "They're beating 2020 problems with 1960 tools." We're in two different centuries, and they don't see it. Cultural exile might change location, but not the code already written into their minds. Parents versus platforms, who's winning? Let's be honest, most parents are outmatched. They are battling invisible machines with weapons they don't understand. They say, "Get off your phone," but can't explain why it hurts. And they preach self-esteem while liking filtered selfies on their own feeds. And they crave control, but surrender the mental lives of their kids to apps. And they are scared, deeply, chronically scared, of losing their child to a world they can't enter. But silence won't save our children. Curiosity might. Building digital resilience. Here's the good news. Adolescent brains are still flexible, still capable of growth, insight, and resistance if we equip them. What works? Co-viewing content and talking about it. Or teaching teens how algorithms work and how they manipulate. Encouraging tech breaks without shame or punishment. And helping them understand why they feel what they feel after scrolling. One Lagos-based psychologist told me, "We don't need to unplug them. We need to help them understand what they're plugging into." Final reflection. When puberty meets the algorithm, it's not a fair fight. Hormones are wild, emotions are raw, and the digital world is relentless. But teens don't need us to fight their battles for them. They need us to name the battlefield. To stop pretending it's just screens, and start understanding it's a war for selfhood. And if we don't show up, the algorithm will. Chapter 3. The Identity Explosion. Gender, Self, Labels, and Confusion. Manchester, UK, 7:21 a.m. In the low light of a grey winter morning, Ruby stood in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing down her school blazer. She was 15, bright-eyed, half Ghanaian, half English, and unsure what it meant to be either, or both, or neither. Pinned just above her school crest was a small enamel badge, a rainbow triangle crossed with the words, they, them. Her mum had rolled her eyes when she saw it last week. Her dad hadn't said a word. But Ruby wore it anyway, because even if she didn't yet know who she was, she had to at least defend who she wasn't. Identity as performance, identity as protest. Something extraordinary is happening in this generation. A vast, often bewildering expansion of how young people understand themselves. Not long ago, "Who am I?" was a philosophical question asked in solitude. Now, it's a social identity to declare. In your bio, on your hoodie, within your friend group, or against your family. And yet, this explosion is not entirely about rebellion or fashion. It's about urgency. Today's teens are facing what psychologists call the fractured mirror, a shattered identity landscape made of competing voices: home, culture, peers, media, religion, politics, internet tribes, personal feelings, and historical wrongs. When Ruby changed her pronouns, she wasn't trying to reject her culture. She was trying to locate her voice inside it. But many parents, especially those who send their teens home to be raised in more traditional environments, experience this not as a search, but as a rejection. Why is identity so hard now? The adolescent brain is wired to seek identity through differentiation. In other words, teens figure out who they are by first figuring out who they're not. In past generations, this process happened slowly, and often locally. A young boy grew into the family trade, and a girl learned to mirror her mother or rebel against her. Culture and religion provided the fence posts for acceptable identity. But now those fence posts have collapsed. Thanks to globalization and digital immersion, a 13-year-old in Hackney might wake up identifying with a Korean pop idol, a Black Lives Matter activist, a transgender TikTok influencer in Florida, a spiritual healing trend from Bali, a cultural meme from South Africa all before breakfast. This is not identity confusion. It's identity saturation. And without adult guides who understand this new terrain, teens are navigating it alone, or worse, being shamed for the journey. The gender earthquake. Perhaps the most polarizing element of the identity explosion is gender. In schools across the UK, US, and Australia, gender-diverse students are increasing rapidly. In 2023, one London school reported that 13% of their students now use gender-neutral or non-binary pronouns. To some, this is liberation. To others, it's disorientation. But to most teens I spoke with, it was just real life. They were not pushed into it. They were listening to their bodies, their emotions, their discomfort, and trying, through language, to name what didn't fit. The cultural backlash has been swift and brutal. In many religious communities, in diaspora families, in traditional societies, any deviation from the male-female binary is seen as dangerous rebellion. This is especially sharp for teens sent back home. One British Nigerian teen, 16-year-old Ayo, shared, "I used to use they, them in London, but here in Nigeria, I pretend. I hide. If I said that here, I'd be labeled possessed or worse." Ayo's body crossed continents, but their identity had to be buried to survive. Labels, freedom or pressure. Teens today are not just choosing identities, they're choosing labels with political and emotional weight. Pansexual, aromantic, demi-boy, neurodivergent, agender, gender fluid, cishet, queer. To adults, this may seem excessive. But to teens, especially online, labels serve a crucial purpose: belonging. If I know my label, I can find my people. Protection. If I state my label, I won't be misread. Empowerment. If I own my label, no one can weaponize it against me. And yet, for some teens, this labeling becomes a trap. If identity is always public, performative, and rigid, then teens can feel they're being boxed in by the very labels that were meant to free them. One 14-year-old boy in Nairobi explained, "Last year I said I was bisexual. Now I'm not sure, but everyone still introduces me like that, so I pretend." This is where adult guidance matters most, not in debating labels, but in helping teens feel safe to change. Because identity, especially in adolescence, should not be a declaration. It should be a conversation. Exile and the fixing of identity. Many UK parents I interviewed who sent their teens abroad cited concerns like, "She's being influenced by TikTok. He's saying he's not a boy anymore." They're confused. They need discipline and structure. They hoped that returning a child to their roots would restore clarity, but identity is not undone by geography. In fact, the pressure to suppress identity abroad often deepens the inner conflict. Some teens learn to code switch. Others live in secrecy. A few become hardened, more defiant than before. None come back unchanged. And often, the price of that change is silence, depression, or the slow erosion of trust between parent and child. What teens wish adults understood. When asked what they wish parents would do differently, the teens I spoke with didn't ask for applause or approval. They asked for space to explore, language that doesn't shame, time to figure it out without being punished, the right to be wrong without being labeled broken, and above all, they asked for curiosity instead of correction. They are not asking adults to join the identity explosion. They are asking us not to fear it. Final reflection: what we call identity confusion is often just identity in motion. The old certainty, boy, girl, black, white, us, them, has given way to something messier, more honest, and profoundly uncomfortable for many adults. But discomfort is not the enemy. Denial is. When we respond to our children's self-discovery with fear, silence, or punishment, we do not return them to themselves. We send them further away. And in a world already pulling them in 1,000 directions, maybe the most radical act is simply to stay close, even when we don't understand, especially then.